Welcome to today's program, and we're going to meet a rather extraordinary man who is known as the Gadfly. His name is Eddie Romero, and he recently caused sensation here in the States and also in Iran. So, Eddie, thank you for being on the program.
It's great to be here. Thanks a lot for inviting me, Dan.
Now, Eddie, I was astonished to find out that you went to Iran recently to protest outside the Evin prison in Tehran. And you went there on behalf of several Christian leaders, including Saeed Abedini, who's been sentenced to 8 years. Tell us how this rather bizarre, amazing plan evolved.
Well, first of all, Dan, let me tell you that I first got involved in human rights back in 2001, specifically with the People's Republic of China. In the world, they are the largest persecutors in the world of our sisters and brothers and other religious minorities. And the Lord got my attention very quickly.
How did that happen?
Well, that happened on the day that the games were awarded to the People's Republic of China, Beijing Summer Games for 2008. I remember this is 2001.
Right.
Well, I had very few Chinese friends, and so I embarked as the Lord called me, and it was a definite call from the Lord to be involved in human rights activism in Beijing. I didn't have a clear picture of what I was going to be doing at that point. So 7-year journey, and I ended up in Beijing and did a protest in Beijing. And like Iran, I was expelled the next day. So having had that kind of experience, and as a Christian, I've had a number of what I would call calls from God, so definitive that it changed the path of my life. For example, being born again, coming out of darkness into His glorious light. God called me out of darkness into His glorious light, changed my life forever. It put me on a whole different path, a whole different trajectory of my life. Being called into the ministry. I've been over 32 years, I've been a pastor. Same church, 32 years.
Which church?
It's Hacienda Christian Fellowship in the city of La Puente. And I've been a professor of philosophy at a community college for the last dozen years. And for the last dozen years, I've been involved in human rights, specifically religious rights, concerning primarily my sisters and brothers in the Lord, but extending to that also other religious minorities that suffer along with our sisters and brothers.
Before we move to Tehran, can you tell us what happened in Beijing? How did you do the protest? Where did you do it?
Well, let me explain. We did the on-the-ground protest had 3 parts to it. The first part, and this has always been very controversial. In fact, I even found Christians wanting to somehow shy away from what I've done, only because it's unconventional, it's unorthodox, it's outside the box, but I think it's right in line with the Spirit of God. So, having said that, though, the 3 parts that I did on the ground. First of all, there was getting to Beijing, okay, as a tourist for the Summer Olympic Games. Once I got into it, I acquired what I call materials to morph 3 hotel rooms. Now, when I say morph 3 hotel rooms, people could put a different spin on it. For example, the People's Republic of China said, I vandalized 3 hotel rooms. Well, I would like to think I actually transformed them from 5-star hotel rooms into interrogation dungeons, which is exactly what they do. And I did this live on Skype video. And I had audio streaming going on at the same time. Once I accomplished that, I departed the rooms and allowed media to come in and actually take pictures of it before the hotel knew about it and before the Public Security Bureau knew about that.
Just so we understand that, you sort of converted the room into like an interrogation cell.
Exactly.
How did you do that?
Well, there was paint involved. I painted walls.
Oh, dear.
And what I did, that's why they called it vandalism. I like the idea of morphine instead, which, by the way, I paid for it and knew that I was going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after I had done that, I had, and I created an effigy that was really a lifelike effigy, as if a person was tortured and left for dead in the room. I mean, it was kind of a scary thing to see when we actually got done with it, okay? Yeah. And I used the logos, the Beijing logos, 2008 Olympic logos, and what I've done, I did a kind of dark form of that. For example, the phrase that the Beijing Olympics uses, our world, one dream. Well, I used the same kind of format, except made it in dark colors, and I said, our world, our nightmare.
Ooh.
Okay, so that's what I put on there, and then I put the names of 5 prisoners of faith and conscience in there. One of them was Pastor Zhang Rongliang, and who actually has a church. Now, you ready for this? It's just staggering because it's all underground of 10 million.
Huh.
A church of 10 million.
Now, what you mean by that is many
throughout China.
Yeah.
They all are church. They are underground churches. They are all house churches that associate with him. So that's the reason why he was in prison.
Yeah.
But anyway, I listed those out.
Huh.
Once I departed the rooms and I knew I was safe out of harm's way, I called my team back home, which is back here in La Puente, LA area, and I let them know I'm out of the room, I'm out of harm's way, and then they called media and said, take a look at this.
Yeah.
And media went into the room, snuck into the rooms because I put the key card behind the do not disturb. And media knew this, the hotel didn't know this, and the Public Security Bureau of Beijing didn't know this. So they found out because media was coming in and it was getting out already. Once I did that, I went northwest of Beijing to a place called Barachu. And I hid out in the mountains for 18 days. So because our promise was, and one of the convictions from the Lord was this: we're not there to interrupt the games. We're not there to be, because they're wonderful friendship building games, and people work long and hard for that, and we were not going to trump them. So I went there, and for 18 days during that whole time the games were on, I went silent. Because I was in the jungle northwest of Beijing, in the foothills of Barachu, and I hid out there for 18 days.
Did you have a roof over your head?
No. In a hole. I actually crawled into a hole that the Lord just kind of led me to, and I clearly would with good conscience say that the Lord led me there, because once I found this hole, because I hadn't been there before, I know the general area, but I hadn't been in this specific place, and the hole was so perfect for my next 18 days, it became a sanctuary for me. That's where I worshiped, that's where I read the Word, and that's where I just waited my time, and I praised, and I glorified God every day.
Did you have food?
Yes, I carried all my food with me. It took a survival training. For some who may not know, I was in the Vietnam War. I was a sergeant in the Marine Corps, and so I had survival skills, and I just had to brush up on them and get myself back into shape, which I did. And so I was able to do this, and able to do this easy enough. I carried all my water. I carried nutrition bars. I carried beef jerky, and just basically waited my time until the Olympics had come to an end. And I had to say goodbye to what I used to call my hobbit hole. Okay, I said goodbye to my hobbit hole. Went back into Beijing, and got myself a little bit cleaned up. Got some fresh clothes on me, shaved a little bit, and went on to Tiananmen Square, right across from the Great Hall of the People. And at 10 o'clock, when the fireworks were over, I then called my congregation back home. I was online now, audio streaming, which, by the way, is still active, and you can still hear it. Audio streaming, and I said to the King, His kingdom, and His soon appearing, God bless you guys. And I raised my voice, and I said, because if you go to Exodus 8:1,
that's the name of your ministry.
That's the name of the ministry, and if you go to the website, Exodus, the number 8 and the word 1.org, you'll find that there we still have to do some updating on that. But you're going to find things on China, and you're going to find things on Iran. And so I said out loud in Mandarin, and I said it in English. On Tiananmen Square, we know where that massacre took place, where conservative estimates are about 1,100 Chinese students fighting for democracy were just slaughtered by the Chinese government in 1989. I was standing on that sacred ground, raising my voice, and I said to the Chinese government right across from the Great Hall of the People, I said, the Lord says, let my people go so that they may worship me. I'm asking you to release Zhang Rongliang, and I listed 4 others, people of faith and conscience, and I asked them to ratify the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, which would give my sisters and brothers not just some power to be able to do something about their situation, but it would just ring around the world that they had not just signed on to it, which they have signed, but they never ratified it, so it would never become the law of the land. And this is what we had hoped for.
How did you get arrested?
Oh, well, first of all, I surrendered. I was they never subdued me, as it were.
Yeah.
I had if you could hear in the audio, there's a few scuffles that go on, okay?
Yeah.
And the reason why is because I told them I will submit to proper authorities, law enforcement, police, I won't submit to just any thug that's going to come along.
Yeah.
And so they had 4 thugs come along. And so in very, without elaborating on this, I was able to get them away from me. Okay, I stayed where I was at. They were the ones who had to leave. And not only that, because of the crowds that were there, immediately they broke out all their cell phones, all their cameras, and started taking pictures and videos of me. Wow. At that time, plainclothesmen went throughout the crowd, grabbing the cameras and the videos and just pulling them down and chasing the people away. And I'm watching this whole thing unfold, and I'm yelling louder and louder and louder. At the very end, they sent a police officer out to me. And he walked to me and he says, "Would you show me your passport?" And I said, "No, I would not, but I would be glad to go with you." And he says, "Okay, then come with me." So we go into a tent that's set up on the edge of the Tiananmen Square. I took my phone, which was up on my shirt pocket, and I put it face down so they couldn't see it was on. They just looked at that. They saw the money I had in my pocket. They saw my New Testament. And so I had this stuff out there. And then they started preliminary interrogations, good cop, bad cop stuff, okay? Yeah. And then after that, they moved me from a tent into what we call now know as a black site. In other words, it's a site that is not a police station. It was, in fact, in a wooded area. And you could actually hear me describing, we're now going north on this street, we're going this street, and then we go down an alley, and you'll hear me, if you hear the audio, you hear me go, uh-oh, this doesn't look good. Because I'm going down an alley now. Yeah. And as I hit the end of the alley, there's a gate that opens up and into this darkness. Oh. And so we go through this thing, and from the distance I see a little house, a little shack. Yeah. And they take me there, and they get me out of the car. And we got 6 police officers that walk out from behind the building that were already there. The 4 plainclothes officers that were with me, they ushered me into the room, and interrogation in the proper sense. And that's when they turned off the phone. Up until
they suddenly realized.
Yeah, once they looked at it, they realized, and they could almost kick themselves for not doing this. But I had just all night interrogations, and the presence of the Lord was incredible.
So because we were going to run out of time, because it's so exciting, how did that one end? And let's move on to Tehran, which is even more spectacular.
Yeah, the way that ended is all-night interrogation. Eventually, somebody new in charge was taken over, and they said to me, "You are going to leave China." And I said, "No, I'm not." I said, "I broke your law. You have to do something." Because understand, Dan, we were prepared to be 2 to 10 years in prison, if not worse. So that was our preparation. Huh. I said, "You can't do that. I broke your law. The hotel rooms. I escaped." And eventually what they didn't know is the place I hid out, they would have never, ever found me. Uh-huh. Because I hid out, are you ready for this? On a military base.
Oh, no.
I actually got past 2 sets of guards.
Yeah.
Okay. Went up into the hills on a military base. They would have never found me. I could hear them practicing their military drills and everything else. And so I told them that, and I thought they were going to keep me as a spy now. They were just going to get rid of me because I told them, that I wasn't afraid of their threats, sure. And I told them that I want to see their justice with my own eyes. Huh. And I don't think that sat well with them because they just thought I was crazy. Well, they pretended that way, but they knew that I wasn't, in fact, out of my mind. Okay.
So how long before they kicked you out?
24 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, just like Iran.
Now we're going to move forward to an even more extraordinary situation. And by the way, gadfly, where did you get that name?
Gadfly is taken from Socrates. I'm a professor of philosophy, and the early Greek philosophers you'll find is Socrates, Plato, and then Aristotle. Yeah. Socrates, as you know, was executed by the Athenians, and by giving him hemlock to drink, he drank this poison. It's because they called him a troublemaker. And he says, "I am a gift from God to the Athenians." He says, "Athens is like a giant noble steed, and I'm just a gadfly that irritates it in the direction it should go." And so I love that. I love that imagery because some people think that what I do is supposed to be a silver bullet.
Yes,
It's supposed to hit the target and end the game, right? It doesn't do that. What I do the real world doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I'm a gadfly. For those of you who know Spanish, I'm a mosca. I'm not much, okay? But what I am, I give to the Lord.
So now we're going to move to this recent one, which hit the headlines all over the world.
Exactly, all over the world.
Why on earth did you do it? How did you arrange it? And How on earth did you get out?
Once again, it has to do with the calling.
Yeah.
You know, I've always had my mind in international affairs, what's going on with our sisters and brothers. Always had a heart for the persecuted. Always have. And it wasn't as if every case hit me this way. It was in China, hit me very hard. And then as I was preparing to lead our church in prayer, and it was during the week, I remember preparing to lead our church in prayer, I was reading about Yosef Nadarkhani in Iran. And that when I was doing the studies for that, I could feel the Lord. If I could just put it this way, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, and the Lord knows this, it was like the Lord was creeping up on me. You know, and it was just kind of, you know, I'm there, and I could sense this is not just another case.
Yeah.
It's the Lord's coming at me. You know, He's calling me again.
Yeah.
And I thought it was over with. I did my bit, you know, and I thought it was over with, but here it is. So once I accepted that call, talking to my wife, just like we did in China, was a whole nother thing.
Sure.
And my wife, you know, as you could imagine, I've been married 43 years. We don't have a bad marriage. We have a very good marriage. We have been blessed by the Lord.
Yeah.
And so when I told her, we had to wrestle through that, and the Lord won her heart.
Wow.
Because she said to me quite simply, she says, if God is big enough to talk to you and call you, He's also big enough to talk to me. And the Lord was gracious.
Yeah.
The Lord was gracious. And He did. And she became my biggest fan and my biggest partner.
So you then go over with some friends and you take your cell phone with you again and you go to this terrible prison, one of the worst prisons in the world.
That's right.
And take us what happened there.
Well, first of all these Gadfly events that I do them alone. I don't take anyone with me.
Yeah.
I am connected with technology, but I don't take anybody with me. So once I went over there, I applied for a visa with Iran, with the Islamic Republic of Iran. And as I did that, I was going to do a Caspian tour, the Caspian Sea north of Tehran.
Yeah.
And so I did a tour for 4 days. Then I jumped the tour. Mm-hmm. I then did not take my flight home. In fact, I went outside of Tehran, and I played the part. Are you ready for this? I played the part of a homeless old man. And for 4 days, I played the part of a homeless old man that I had enough food. I had it hidden away. And so I was ready to go. I was trained enough to do survival. And once I did that, and it's in a city called Chitgard. If anybody looked at the map of Tehran, they'll see that it's to the west. Yeah. And I was able to hide out there for 4 days. At the very end, I had some of my Persian friends, my Iranian friends, write a little note and say to me in this note, please take my grandfather to go to Ivan prison to visit his son. Huh. Okay, they did that. And so when I got in a taxi, I flashed my money first of all, okay, and then I gave him the little slip of paper which says take my son to Ivan. And so the taxi driver looks at the money. I'm a good customer. He takes me right to Ivan prison. Now, I studied Ivan prison from Google, okay? You go to Google Maps, you could see it. Yeah. So I knew exactly where to be dropped off. Then I waited to the time that they were supposed to take in visitors to visit the inmates. So I made my way up like an old homeless man right up to the gate. And as soon as I realized this is the place, I took off my beanie, I dropped my cane, I took off my coat, and I raised my voice in Farsi. And I said, the Lord says, let my people go so that they may worship me. I'm asking you to release Farshid Fatih, Saeed Abadini, Mustafa Bordbar, Ali Reza Sayerian, and interesting enough, a Muslim attorney, Muhammad Ali Dakhta, because he was the attorney that defended the Christians. And so he was in that prison too. So I was asking for him to be released, and I was shouting this out. The guards are looking at me.
And this was being broadcast again, wasn't it?
Yes. Now again, what we have here, we have the audio going. I have an iPhone with one pocket with audio. I have the other pocket with it flowing on a low level Ustream account.
Okay.
And so people are seeing the snips of this because it was kind of sporadic.
Sure.
Snips of this live, and they're hearing my voice live, and the protest is going on, and they didn't know even when they took me in, because they did take me in. There's pictures of it being taken in. I was being taken in, and then they walked me upstairs after a while to interrogations. And we started the interrogations again. And I knew exactly what to do with the interrogations in the sense that, it's very similar to that of the Chinese, except the Chinese were a bit more rougher than the Iranians. The Iranians were actually very respectful to me. Okay, there was no rough stuff like there was with the Chinese. They were very, very respectful to me, and eventually it was as if they were processing me, they were letting me in, and so they put me eventually before interrogators. I spent at least 5 hours in interrogation.
Yeah.
And if any time you probably read the verse where Jesus tells his disciples, do not worry what you shall say before the authorities, because in that moment the Holy Spirit will speak through you. Okay? Dan, I experienced that. And talk about an incredibly energizing and humbling moment. 5 hours. And by the end of that, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat, thrilled in the Lord, okay? And these guys are slumping down, exhausted, okay? And I am so excited. I spent a night in solitary confinement. And I accepted this. Lord, here's where I'm going to live. This is my new congregation. This is my new place.
Wow.
Okay, I fully was prepared and accepted it.
Yeah.
From the worst possible scenario, which people can imagine what that might be.
Yeah.
We were ready for the whole thing.
Huh.
And so we went there. We did that, and I have had reports since then that have come back to me. 3 days after that, I heard reports from Iranians, okay, that my voice was heard throughout the prison.
Huh.
They heard my protest because I did it. Are you ready for this? I did it in Farsi, which is the language of Iran. I did it in English, okay, American English, and I did it in Spanish, and I did it in Chinese again, all right there in Tehran. So it was there, and my voice was heard. And what was really wonderful about this, I got a letter 3 days later from 3 of the 5 prisoners that I had asked for, just commending me. They were just amazed. It was beyond amazed what they had said in that letter. I'm going to be publishing that letter as soon as I get permission, because people were at risk for smuggling this letter out. So I want to make sure nobody's going to get in trouble about this.
Wow.
So I'm going to put that on my website. And it was so amazing what they had said to me. I couldn't even read. When an agent handed me that letter, I could not even read through that letter with what they said. That how much the encouragement. Just to let you know, a couple of days ago, I was at a Persian meeting, and at that meeting, they were told what I had done, and most of them had already known that. A large man next to me grabs me a hold, and he says, "You know what?" He says, "I spent time in Evin prison." And he says, as a Christian, as a pastor, he said, and I always wondered whether or not anybody else knew I was in there besides God. And with tears in his eyes, Dan, he says to me, what you have done is an absolutely wonderful thing. You have given them courage and boldness. And I was told that everyone in the prison before the day was over knew I was there, knew I was a pastor, knew I was a Christian, and I was calling out for my brothers and sisters in the Lord there. And because they went through that, both guards, and are you ready for this? Guards and Muslims alike admired what was done. And I think that gave a fresh ear to the gospel.
Well, as we're coming to the end of this rather extraordinary conversation with Eddie Romero, the Gadfly, you're now back here. Amazingly, many people thought you'd be there for life. What would you like to say about the Christians in those prisons? How can we pray for them? How can we pray for you?
Well, the biggest thing they're dealing with, and I've been told this over and over again, is whether or not anybody's thinking about them, whether or not anybody's praying for them. They just don't know. They know their churches in Iran. They know their friends and their family are. But they don't know anything really beyond that. And pray is so powerful. And I think it's just one of those things that are able to penetrate, through walls and everything else. And there is no material boundary that could ever separate us from that. And they need to know that. And whatever ministries are involved, there are several good ministries that are involved. Take one, for example, Elam Ministries. They're based out of London, good friends of mine. Elam Ministries is a place to get connected, find out what's going on. They're cutting edge information. But also, you could get to other human rights websites to find this out too. But these are places you can go. But prayer is the biggest thing. Supporting ministries that are being advocates for the persecuted, and those like myself who do intervention for the persecuted.
Well, we've been speaking to Eddie the Gadfly Romero, and if people want to know more about the ministry, what's the website?
The website is Exodus, the number 8, the word 1.org. That's EXODUS, the number 8, ONE.org, and there's going to be more information, and I'm going to be updating it this week.
Eddie, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Dan.